Hello everyone, this is part 16 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Seated on top of an enclosed booth, the massive fenced-in forest that the Hokage required that he use behind him and the various ninja in front of him, Hitaki Kakashi causally flicked the page of his Aika. This was not to say that he wasn't watching those ninja present for this exam, being Anbu commander allowed him to divide his attention equally after all. Of all the groups, only 2 ninja appeared undaunted by the ominous atmosphere that extended from the tainted forest. One, of course, was the red-haired child called Gaara who had been driven to near-complete insanity due to his demon, and the other naturally was Uzumaki Naruto, who had spent more time with Mitsubishi Anko than anybody ever should. Ahem, the polite voice of his assistant Proctor said from the enclosed booth, gaining his attention, Kakashi-sama, isn't it about time to explain things to them? Right, Kakashi said, eye closing happily as he looked up to address the gathered ninja. Welcome to the second stage of the exam. Practice Area 44. Also known as the Forest of Death. There was a ripple through the group, but still Naruto and Gaara showed a frightening lack of intimidation. Opening his eye once more, Kakashi beamed at the gathered ninja, continuing his explanation. Before I explain everything, your villages have accepted that with the use of this stage there will be deaths. If any of you want to quit, now is your only chance, otherwise you either pass or S. Oi, just hurry up and tell us what we have to do. Naruto's voice, almost belligerent, rang out. Well, if you speak for everyone, okay then. Kakashi said, sweeping the group to see if anyone wanted to quit. Finding none, his visible eye went emotionless as he began to explain the rules. This exam is the ultimate survival test and it will be within this area. The rules are very simple. Each 3-man team will be given 3 scrolls. These scrolls bear the name of a ninja participating in this exam, and each team's set of scrolls will be matched so that 2 belong to that 2 and that the 3rd will belong to someone else. Are you just trying to complicate this? A loud voice interrupted, and Kakashi didn't even bother glancing at them, though a sudden whimpering sound could be heard from the white dog on their head. Each team will then have to locate the 3rd scroll that belongs to their team and head for the tower in the center of the Forest of Death. This ensures that each team will have to fight each other. To pass this test, there are 3 requirements. 1. Each team must have a scroll that bears that member's name. 2. Each team must be whole. 3. Only 4 teams with the best time will be allowed to advance further. Is there anything that would disqualify us? An older boy, from Kusa it appeared, asked. Disqualify? Kakashi asked, as if the concept was amusing. Well, besides S, the only other thing I can see is destroying a scroll. So, other than destroying a scroll and S, the boy repeated as if to be clear, anything goes in there. Yes, once you're in the forest and until you reach the tower it's all about survival. So feel free to maim, and do whatever else you feel is needed to ensure your advancement. Kakashi said blandly before holding a finger up, but please keep in mind that everyone else is going to be doing the same and will most likely respond in kind to your actions. Hurry up, Gaara commanded blankly, his flat green eyes boring into a nearby Kusa ninja. Sure, if you think you're up to this, Kakashi shot back, eye curving up happily. Okay, so 1 team at a time come to the booth, get your scrolls and you'll be escorted to one of the gates. Gate 14. You find out which one has the scroll we need, Ino. Naruto asked absently as he juggled the 3 scrolls they had been assigned. Yeah, the girl said quietly, fingering the ninjata she was wearing. Shino already has a bug on the team. We'll be ready to go once they tell us to start. Great, Naruto said, tossing her the scroll that bore her name and then Shino the one that bore his. So which team was it? One of the Kusa teams. Ino said absently, glancing at him. What are you going to do with that one? Oh, this. Naruto said, holding the scroll up absently. Well, I think I'll probably give it to the first person I see and let them deal with whoever the Gaara guy is. Forest of Death, Day 2, location, 30 miles from the entrance gates. Ino had known from the first glance that the forest was not to be taken lightly. The trees were larger and more twisted than anything she had ever seen before. The rusted fence, with all of those warning signs and the barbed wire, had proclaimed the danger clearly. It might even have been her imagination, but she could swear there had been monstrous shapes moving in the gloom of the trees. She had, however, apparently been the only one to notice those things. None of the other examinees had even looked away from Kakashi as he explained the concept of this exam. Well, except for Naruto, who had been busy mumbling to himself. Even after they had entered the gates, each member of their team sporting a scroll, he had seemed oblivious to the danger. Still, they were making good time, with only 5 days to reach the center with their scrolls. Shino estimated that they were close. Using a stick to poke at the fire in front of her, Ino turned her mind away from the forest and, instead, focused on the more intriguing situation of Naruto's secret. Ever since he had admitted to giving misinformation to confirm that they had no spy, Ino had become almost obsessed with trying to figure out what his real secret was. So far, despite rather creative guesses, she still hadn't gotten it right, which frustrated her to no end. Snap. Jerking at the sound of a snapping twig, Ino whirled, hand clutching at her ninja to tightly and half drawing it, only to pause upon seeing Naruto returning from his latest nighttime patrol. At least, it looked like Naruto. As Shino had pointed out, it could be a real possibility for a spy to enter the team and attempt to steal their scrolls. When Naruto made the hand sign that they had agreed on, Ino eased her sword back into the scabbard and relaxed slightly. Oi, so things been quiet? Naruto asked, plopping down across from her and producing a cup of his nearly infamous instant ramen. Yeah, Ino agreed, rolling her eyes as she turned back to poking at the fire absently. Hey, Naruto, do you think we'll really pass this exam? Of course, Naruto said enthusiastically without looking up from his preparations. Shino keeps saying we have the best time. We don't have to worry about losing our spots in the final exam or nothing. Aha, Ino said looking up. But only the 4 teams with the best time and all their scrolls can pass, remember. How do we know for sure that we're going to pass? Oi, Ino, just have some faith, okay? Naruto said, flashing her his trademark grin. I mean, Shino's really smart, and you're really good, too. We'll be fine. Snorting in exasperation, Ino rolled her eyes and turned back to the fire. He had said that last night, as well. Then again, she had been worrying last night too, which made her wonder why she instinctively waited to talk to Naruto about her worries instead of Shino. Then, like every time she wondered, she realized the answer. Shino was very clinical about things, and he never tried to reassure her. Naruto was still realistic, but he always reassured her. Glancing up, she almost blushed at how the light from the fire highlighted his face. Shaking that off, Ino sighed and threw her stick on the fire. I'm going to bed. But you haven't even tried to guess my secret, yet. Naruto said teasingly. Ino blinked, then snapped her fingers. It had totally slipped her mind. It had started shortly after the first test, but Ino had been trying, and failing, to guess his real secret. Although, he did keep offering to tell his secret if Ino would tell hers, which she refused to do. Studying the blonde intently for a moment, Ino grinned and pointed at him. I know, you're really Anko's son. You guessed that at lunch yesterday, Naruto said, grinning as he started on his ramen. Oh, Ino said, shrugging. How about you're really a Kami? Nope. A Gaki? Hell no. Sasuke-kun's bastard brother. F no. Naruto shouted, choking on his ramen. Geez, just tell me already, Ino said crankily, unable to believe she couldn't figure this out. Okay, Naruto said firmly. Just as soon as you tell me your secret. Quote. Good night, Ino said curtly and then, got up from the fireside and lay down on her sleeping mat. No way in hell was she going to tell that bastard her secrets. They were for her to know and for him to never find out. Rolling away from him, she closed her eyes as all of the mental stress and fatigue of the day carried her easily to sleep. Usually, that would be the end of a person's problems, but not so for a Yamanaka. They had lucid dreams of stray memories from minds they had been in. It was the way their minds coped with the family jutsu. Last night, she had dreamed about the childhood of one of the examiners. Tonight was different. It didn't feel like a dream. Though it was lucid, it held none of the feel of a dream, nor did it feel like a memory. It felt more like her own mind was trying to make something comprehensible. At first, there was nothing but darkness, sheer, inescapable darkness. Then, a distant sound reached her. As the darkness faded, like a film being brought into focus, vague forms took shape around her, and, soon enough, she could see that she was in a nighttime forest. Then, the noise sharpened to a dull whisper and, suddenly, the echoing sound of screams and shouts reached her. They were wordless, meaningless, but she knew that they were the screams of people. Instinctively, Ino tried to wake up, but instead she was drawn as if by some unseen force toward the noise. And that was when she noticed the odd, unnatural red glow that highlighted the sky. Before she could ponder the implications of that, she was hurled from the confines of the forest and out onto a ledge that overlooked Konoha, and terror gripped her heart. Every child had heard the story, seen renditions of that night, but Ino, like others, had never really believed that the horror had been so great. Now, laid out before her, was the beast in all of its dark glory. Buildings were burning, and that unearthly red fire kept growing higher and brighter, spreading despite the best efforts of the ninja. The odor of charred wood and permeated the air, even up so high, the strength of it almost choking her. Worst of all, however, were the screams, the cornucopia of pain, roar and bee. They echoed forever, etching themselves into her memory despite her attempts to block them out. And then, through the flames and smoke, she saw it. It was massive. No, it was gigantic. Its sheer size should have been impossible. The fur looked as if it was anything but natural, the fangs were vicious and jagged. There was a faint whistling in the air, created by the nine tails as they through buildings with ease and toppled a nearby mountain, along with the massive village walls. The QB. Ino whispered, eyes wide and body frozen in terror. And then, that massive head turned towards her, those eyes glowing bright in the night, its mouth gaping open to allow the single, most evil growl she could imagine escape and reverberate through the air. It made her be turned to ice, and she collapsed like a puppet that had her strings feeling as if her bladder would give out at any moment. Suddenly, Ino knew exactly what this monster was. It was a fox. It was a demon. It was death and destruction. It was unstoppable. Help, Ino whimpered. And then, suddenly, with a jerk, she was awake. Blinking rapidly, her skin clammy and her mind almost panicked, it took her what felt like a lifetime to realize that Naruto was hovering over her, his hand on her shoulder. Oi, Ino, you okay? Naruto said worriedly. You were thrashing around for a while and then got really still and started, crying. Ino opened her mouth to shout at him that she had not been crying, but realized that she couldn't form any words. She couldn't remember how to talk. Her terror had been so deep that she had been reduced to a wild animal. What had her mind been trying to understand that it would so terrify her with every Konoha nin's worst nightmare? Hey, say something, Naruto said, his own tone almost panicked, while he patted her cheek softly. She stared at him for the longest moment, wondering at the warmth of his hand. Ino, come on, this isn't funny. I'm fine, Ino finally said, reaching up to move his hand away from her cheek, only to marvel at the feel of it in her hand. I was just having a nightmare. You sure? Naruto asked in concern, looking dubious, apparently unconcerned that she was holding his hand. Yeah, I'm sure, Ino said and then smiled, toying with one of his fingers absently before letting his hand go. If a girl didn't know better, she could think you liked her. In response, Ino was treated to the unusual sight of Naruto blushing. I was just worried, he snapped and then, getting up, stormed away from her. Ino chuckled for a moment, then felt her body go slack from lack of tension, allowing her to slump back onto her sleeping mat. Then, in the ethereal calm that had descended over her, Ino wondered why, exactly, she had never before noticed how nicely Naruto's nose was shaped. Rolling over, she closed her eyes, but she knew that sleep would not return to her, so instead she began to think about what could have brought on her dream. It was a long night. Gaara hated people. It was an unspoken fact. Generally, the only reason he existed was to hate N.K. Love of the self, that was his entire existence. Someday, he knew that he would eventually turn on Kankuro and Temari, would use his sand to slowly crush the life out of them. His father would be first, however, then maybe the rest of the village. Then, Kankuro and Temari. Another genin had called Gaara insane once. Right up until the sand had drunk his bee. Idiot, challenging us head on. Gaara opened his eyes, lifting his head to stare impassively at the rain genin in front of him. It was curious, he had K who knew how many stone and grass teams, more than a few leaf and other teams. Yet, this was the only rain team they had encountered. How would they scream? Would they scream as his sand crushed them? Lost in his thoughts, he paid no attention as Kankuro started talking, saying something about how pointless fighting was a waste of time. It doesn't matter, Gaara interrupted, staring at the men across from him in something that approached contempt. All that appear in front of me must s. The rain nin's face purpled in anger, and he pulled various umbrellas from his back, shouting about something, but Gaara watched in utter boredom as they were launched and the man started his attack. In the second it took for the thousands of needles to sail through the air to K him, Gaara had crossed his arms and allowed his mother to appear like magic to encase him in safety. Impossible, the rain ninja said in surprise as the needles thudded into the sand barrier and ground around him. Is that it? Gaara asked with restrained glee. It was time. He could hear his mother asking for B, demanding it, and he was ready to let her have it. I guess I'll have to make it rain B. Gaara watched intently. It was interesting to see the faces of those he would K right before they realized they were S. Some would tremble, some would stand the ground, some like the rain nin now rushing him would attack. Not that it mattered, Gaara always won, and his existence always continued. With very little interest in the catching of the man, Gaara watched as he was jerked to a stop by the sand as it swirled around his legs. Slowly, it climbed and clumped over the man, encasing him so tightly that he could barely breathe and the only thing to show was his face. Gaara liked to watch the faces of his victims, the futile hope and desperation as they were crushed to death. Stretching his hand out towards the shocked and now terrified ninja, he slowly clenched his hands, causing the sand to compact. The rain ninja grimaced and then screamed outright as his bones were slowly broken and then crushed. Gaara regarded the man for a moment, his head tilting to the side, dissatisfied with the lack of begging, and abruptly tightened his hand into a complete fist, causing the sand to finish its gruesome work. With a loud crunch, the man was a rain of B showering the area, save for Gaara, who causally used his sand to shield himself. Desert graveyard, Gaara said, feeling cheated at that man's apparent acceptance of death. Then, he remembered the other two rain ninja, and he grinned, realizing that he had two more chances to feel the satisfaction he had been denied. He saw the terror, the horror, etched in their faces as they suddenly realized he was staring at them. They tried to placate him, but Gaara was not to be soothed like Kankuro. Within minutes, he had guided his sand up both, entrapping them tightly. Both arms held before him, he listened to their screams and shrieks of pain in something he could only assume was pleasure. Bye-bye, Temari said, her voice falsely cheery. As he clenched both of his hands, suddenly both ninja, in a cornucopia of noise and B.S. painfully, giving him a taste of the satisfaction he sought. Still, as he relaxed his arms, he felt incomplete. None of them had truly fought back. Struggled and only to have him crush their hope. They had been pitiful, and he detested their B mixing with his sand. Let's head for the toe. Shut up, Gaara whispered, the voice of his mother demanding more B and telling him there was one nearby that could be enough. That could give him the long sought for sensations, the feeling of his existence being worth something. Let's stop, Kankuro said placating, after all, Temari wants to be a chunin. Gaara shifted his gaze from the black-garbed puppeteer to the girl, who, according to others, was pretty, and then looked in the direction that his sand was demanding of him. You've K10 or 15 teams, isn't that enough? Kankuro tried to reason, his tone soothing. Gaara could sense the fear, the terror barely held in check. The puppet user was aware of how easily Gaara could and would K him, if it suited him. Coward. Don't say such cold things, Temari interjected, her tone pleading. Looking at her, he saw her forced smile and the hands in front of her as if trying to stop his attack. Listen to your sister, okay? Plus, if we pass soon, you'll get to see really strong people. And prove your existence, right? Please. Gaara felt his mother raging that a person that could have given his existence meaning had left, and part of him felt like crushing Temari. Instead, he reached out and reformed the cork to his gourd of sand, silently filling it up once more. Finished, he allowed the cork to return to its home and then glared at Temari and Kankuro. Fine. Gaara decided to K both of them before he K his father. Anko wondered how she had let herself get talked into this, then remembered it had, of course, been Kakashi who had managed it. Still, in her opinion, it was a stupid assignment and a waste of her skills. After all, there was quite a bit going on at the moment: Unity, the latest Uchiha off Hyuga fight, the military build-ups in stone and grass, and the oh-so-fun arguments between the Hokage and the Uchiha over Kakashi's eye. So, yes, as far as Mitarashi Anko was concerned, in comparison with those situations, patrolling the Forest of Death for a member of some mysterious group called Akatsuki was stupid. Of course, such thoughts could be because despite her talent, skill, intelligence and K-body, she did not have the patience to deal with ghost enemies. She needed tangible and real threats, Unity, for example, or her sensei, even. Something she could make be. Still, it hadn't been a complete waste of time. She had gotten to see Naruto and his team fight, after all. It was obvious, of course, that Naruto was the strongest of the three, but the other two were no slouches, and, most importantly, they functioned very well together. Even her backup, Jin and Goro, two Anbu trainees, had been suitably impressed at the display. Besides that small moment of interest, however, the patrol had been boring as hell. They had yet to see another team after Naruto's, and there had been no contact with the other patrols, which wasn't surprising, really. Anko was almost tempted to think that the Hokage and Kakashi had come up with this just to keep her busy. It seemed like something they would do. Coming to a stop, Anko crouched, studying the forest in annoyance. Sector 3 clear, Jin said casually from her right. Anko-sama, isn't it odd that we haven't made contact with another team? Not really, Anko said without looking away from the forest. The Forest of Death is a large area. Even with 5 active patrols, contact is almost impossible to accomplish. Yes, but I meant the Chunin examinees, Jin said, assuming a crouching position as well. Besides Team 9, we've yet to see another team. I think, even for the size of this forest, that is unusual. Anko snorted, then glanced at the trainee. You have a point there, but I can't find it in myself to care too much. After all, fewer teams means better odds for Naruto and the others. Yes, but what if? Hey, what's Hayate-san doing here? Goro suddenly interrupted, and Anko turned her attention away from Jin and to the still-standing trainee. Noticing her attention, Goro nodded slightly at the distant figure of a passing Hayate. Anko felt the hair on the back of her neck bristle slightly, knowing that there was no reason for that man to be in this forest. More important was the fact that he was not moving like Hayate. He was moving too much like him to be a coincidence. Which meant several things, none of which were good. I thought he was on Medi. Jin, Goro, Anko said abruptly without looking at either ninja. Go find Itachi and tell him to get his over here quickly. I think we've found our Akatsuki. But, Anko-sama, that's Hayate-san. No, it only looks like him, Anko said, standing up once more, eyes following his path. The easiest way of entering the enemy's stronghold is to do so in a familiar guise. Wolf in sheep's clothing, Goro summarized, sounding impressed. Exactly, Anko said in annoyance. So get your in gear and get him here. I'll need more than just 2 recruits in a fight with someone of this level. He didn't seem that strong to me, Jin said. Then you don't need to be in Anbu, Anko snapped. He's Sannin level, so get out of here. That finally seemed enough to send the two scurrying away, allowing Anko to follow. Hayate. I've waited too long for this. You're not getting away from me, sensei. Shino could feel them, they were closing in. He didn't need his family to tell that much. These 3 were either not the best of ninja or very confident. Pretending to ignore them for the moment, he turned his head slightly, checking on his teammates. Ino looked a tad worn down from lack of sleep, and Naruto seemed distracted. He knew better though. Ino was always aware of the small things, and Naruto always seemed ready no matter how distracted he was. Still, it was possible that Ino might not be awake enough to know, so he dropped back, keeping his tone low. Ino-san, do you sense them? Huh. The blonde girl blinked, looking at him curiously, and he sighed. The enemy. They're preparing to attack. Oh. Ino managed, but Shino saw the way her eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't known, which meant he had probably averted her death by alerting her. Looking at Naruto, he started to say something, when he saw the intense and cold look settling onto the boy's face. They're splitting up for a 3-point pincer move, 2 from the side and 1 from below. How do you know that? Ino demanded hotly, looking at him. The weak always try to K the strong by dividing their strength, Naruto said seriously, his tone almost a mirror of Anko's. A 3-point attack would work effectively for them in this situation, Shino said in agreement. 3 different directions means we'll each have to respond independently of each other, which can increase their chances of overpowering us. That's what I said, Naruto said, glaring at him. Shino felt something race up his spine, something he took correctly to be fear. That glare had been nothing but a promise of M. Suddenly, Shino wondered if, maybe, the real danger in this forest wasn't the other teams, but the obviously unstable boy they were working with. Baisu Kusake. With a deft move Shino dodged the incoming attack, noting the half-dozen grass-like whips that seemed to come from everywhere in a crisscrossing fashion. A second later, he dodged a small hail of 3-bladed shuriken and created a wall of bugs to block the nin's incoming kick. Yet, even as the man retreated from the wall, Shino was surprised to hear Ino cry out in pain. Turning quickly, he confirmed that the girl had been caught unaware by what appeared to be a bear trap made of leaves. Ino, however, quickly lashed out with her sword, it in half and countering her enemy's next attack. Pushing her to the back of his mind, Shino turned back to his own fight and just barely managed to leap back in time to avoid yet another grass-based ninjutsu. Landing, he found himself staring at a large Kusanin, who seemed to be grinning even though he should have had no basis for it. You seem amused by something. Hey, should I tell you? The boy said, lunging forward with a powerful swing which was turned aside by his bugs grasping the arm and diverting it. I would like to know, Shino said as blandly as ever. Okay. After we K you, we'll have K a total of 5 teams. That's one more over the other Kusa teams. Shino felt his eyes widen at the implication, unable to believe that there were teams intentionally roaming the forest looking for others to K. Still, he stayed in the present and dodged yet another grass jutsu with a carefully timed Kikai clone. The man backed off for a moment, surprise on his face followed by what looked like amusement. So, you're not as pathetic as the other teams, huh? This should be fun. Shino, in response, held his hands out, allowing a swarm of bugs to come swirling out. Thump, thump, thump. Naruto could hear his heartbeat pounding furiously in his ears, could feel the excitement of battle flowing through his body. This was the moment he was coming to love, the oblivion of it all, the way the entire world went away as he fought. It was almost surreal, and he couldn't help but grin like Anko usually did. Twisting his way out of yet another grass-based attack, he launched his own attack in the form of kunai and shuriken. He was rewarded with the sight of forcing his enemy, the all-too-familiar Noga, to flee to a safer location. Still airborne, Naruto created a cage bunchen and used it as a springboard, dropping toward his surprised enemy. Kunai clashed with the scraping of metal, and Noga was driven to his knees, while Naruto flipped forward and landed in a crouch, a kick-s into the Kusa Genin's back. Turning, his grin faded as the Genin suddenly crumbled to reveal that it had been a Kusa bunchen. Is that all you have? Noga said from somewhere among the foliage. Is that the strength that'll make you the disease of Hokage? Oi! You think you're so damn bad, why don't you face me? Naruto shouted in response, eyes darting all around him in an attempt at locating his enemy. Why should I? I'm a true shinobi, we don't fight in the open, Noga echoed back. Oi! Or maybe you're just a coward, Naruto said, clutching his kunai tighter. Is that it? Are you afraid of the disease? You expect that to work on me? I am not some simple-minded buffoon, Noga shouted, even as a half-dozen grass-like whips seemed to come from everywhere in a crisscrossing fashion. Baisu Kusake. Naruto, in response, dodged and weaved his way through the attack, hurling kunai into the foliage where the first grass whip had come from. As if that would work, Noga taunted from his hiding place. Even if I was there, those kunai could be avoided easily, the proud voice was off, however, as the sound of several explosions rent the air and the section he had just attacked was left in ruins. Oi! I may not be able to see you, but sooner or later I can blow you up, Naruto taunted back, eyes darting all around, wondering where the hell Noga was, and then he felt it, the danger sense that he had spent so long cultivating under Anko. It was a moment too late, he'd been caught flat-footed, and a grass whip was suddenly protruding through his sea. Sarese, Hokage, Noga cackled, finally leaving his hiding spot. Now I wonder who will. Oi! Excuse me, Naruto suddenly said from behind the gloating boy, followed by a swift kick to the boy's head. Do you mind? I'm sorta mourning my bunshin there. Tumbling to a stop, Noga blinked in surprise, then looked around just in time to see the Naruto that was impaled puff out of existence. How? Impossible, that couldn't have been a Kage Bunshin. I had you. Well, Naruto said with a prickish grin as he drew a kunai. I make a lot of, and, oi, a real shinobi can kawari me without missing a beat. So I see, Noga hissed, climbing to his feet while shaking his head as if to clear it. Good, Naruto said, going serious. It was time he showed this little bastard the truth of what it meant to fight a Konoha ninja, a future Hokage. Now, do you really want to see my strength, Noga? Show me your strength, Hokage, Noga said intently, and I'll show you it's nothing. Naruto wasted no time, charging across the clearing, ready for the attack, willing it to come so that he could perform the heavy and end this fight. Instead, he was suddenly forced to leap aside and back to avoid a whip that seemed to have formed around Noga's hand. Missing its target, the whip connected with a tree, gouging out several sections of bark. Watching intently, Naruto followed the recoil of the weapon and then glanced at his opponent, noting that the whip seemed to be protruding directly from his hand. My personal attack, Noga said with a grin. The Arake. The thorns are twice as sharp as kunai and coated with enough poison to kill you before you can blink. Really? Let's test that, Naruto said in response and darted forward once more, ducking the first S at his head, then the return S at his legs with a jump and a flip. His hand grabbed the vine between the thorns and yanked. The end result was Noga being pulled forward, surprise etched on his face, and Naruto S his other fist into the boy's face with a crunch. His reeling away pulled the whip taut, and Naruto was quick to produce a kunai to S it in half. Discarding the portion he had been holding, Naruto darted forward once more, ducking yet another S at his head using heavy style, and then, to Noga's mounting confusion, reappeared with a knee S into the Kusagen's stomach. Noga stumbled away once more, one hand clutching his stomach while the other clutched his face. Naruto, however, was already on the move and, grabbing the boy's arm, yanked him around to S into a tree. Oof. Noga managed, before an elbow S into his jaw and the arm that had been using the whip was yanked to the side painfully. So, a Hokage is nothing, Naruto hissed, the cloth on the handle of the kunai twisting in his grip as he pressed the cold tip of the kunai to the boy's teeth. A pathetic disease. You told me something once. I think it was, conquer fear, they should fear you. A cage, Noga hissed, glaring at him, is nothing. So are you, Naruto whispered and then, without warning, yanked the kunai away from the boy's teeth and jabbed it into the outstretched wrist. Then, despite Noga's scream, he followed the motion with a twisting S so that he yanked his kunai free in a spray of B. The resulting scream was oddly satisfying, as was Noga collapsing to the ground, desperately trying to stop the B flow from his now ruined hand. Naruto, however, turned his gaze away from the boy, suddenly remembering that he was not the only one out here fighting. It took him a moment to find Shino's fight, and he was annoyed to find that they were doing little more than jumping around. Hell, had they even exchanged attacks? Snorting in annoyance, Naruto turned away from the boy and attempted to locate Ino. He did so just in time to find Ino stumbling back from her opponent, the ninja to sticking almost comically from the Kusa Sea. So enthralled by what he saw, Naruto barely noticed when Noga shouted for a retreat, barely noticed as the ninja Shino had been fighting scurried away or the way Shino just stared after them. As he watched the ninja finally topple over, one part of him couldn't help but wonder if that was what his own first K had looked like. The other wondered if it had been Ino's first K, and, when he saw her collapse and heard her muttering that it was an accident, he had his answer. Suddenly, he felt a leaden weight settle into his stomach, then, against his will, he started towards her. It was an accident, Ino said softly, staring at the ninja to plunged into the prone body. She stumbled back and collapsed with a thump, eyes never leaving the figure. Her mind was replaying the moment, his wild S at her T, her smooth duck and lunge. The sound, the surprise that had coursed through her, the way the bee had coiled down the blade. Dimly, she was aware of someone approaching from behind and then crouching next to her. Turning, she found herself staring into Naruto's blue eyes. He was studying her and then he looked at what she had done. Some part of Ino wanted to make him not see it, to hide it. Instead, she watched him, the way he studied her in silence, his face a mask. Finally, he turned back to her, his blue eyes revealing shadows of emotions that she could just barely fathom. It was a gaze that, under normal circumstances, would make her blush and stammer. For now, it gave her something to latch onto, something to hold the urge to break down completely and lose it at bay. You did great, Naruto said softly, his tone seemingly more intimate than she had imagined possible. I like him, Ino said, her eyes burning from the tears she was trying so hard to stop. Yeah, Naruto said while nodding curtly in agreement. Still, better him than you, nay. I shouldn't have, Ino mumbled, choking back a sob. Naruto was silent for a long moment and then sighed, looking back at the body. It's one of the first things we learn. Ino froze for a moment staring at the blade and then up at him, at the way he carried himself. The way he spoke, the look on his face, in those eyes. Suddenly Ino knew, Naruto had already been through this. Had already stained his hands with B. It can't be that easy. It is, Naruto said, looking back at her, trying so hard to give her a reassuring look. Ninja, even Hokages, have to K. It's our art. We just have to live with it. Getting up, he approached the body and pulled her sword free before coming back to offer it to her. I can't, Ino said, looking away, ashamed and revolted. Oi, Ino, you have to. You're a ninja now, Naruto said, squatting to put the sword on the ground in front of her. When she turned to stare at him, he gave her a small, proud smile. Next time that bastard says you're not, you can prove it. Ino nodded slightly, allowing the slight against Sasuke to pass, and reaching out with a trembling hand to grasp the handle of the ninja too. Climbing to her feet alongside Naruto, she felt lost, and the sword no longer felt right to her. Was this what it was like to take a life? To feel as if nothing in the world was right anymore? Turning, Ino studied the blonde next to her, seeing for a moment the man he would become. Naruto-kun, she paused at her own voice, surprised at how calm and steady it sounded. When he turned to look at her in surprise, she continued with her question. What was it like, your first K? Ino saw the way his face tightened. It was almost invisible, really, the way his shoulders tensed and his eyes dimmed slightly. Ino regretted asking now. She should have known better, but he was the only one present that had taken a life and she needed to know. Needed to know that all of the horror, the fear and pride she felt was normal. It was beautiful, Ino-chan, Naruto finally said, his tone rough and strained as he turned away from her. It was beautiful. Ino watched in silence as he walked away and then looked down at the still B sword in her hand. Almost mechanically, she fumbled for the cleaning cloth Hayat had given her and began to wipe the blade clean, struggling desperately to see through her tears. I'm a ninja now, Ino managed in a steady voice, despite her tears, and then, with a flourish, she sheathed the weapon and joined Naruto. The forest was quiet, for the most part at least. Here and there were cicadas and other insects starting their twilight songs, joined by the sound of the whistling wind and the rustling of swaying branches. The cloud-spotted sky was actually sort of interesting. It held a note of light and dark blues which signaled the beginning of night, and, on the horizon of the trees to the west, it was a mixture of peach and white. Combined, it gave the forest a sort of gloomy and forlorn feeling, which would serve to unnerve even most ninja, to be honest. After all, there was a reason why it was called the Forest of Death, and not the Forest of Warm, Fuzzy Thoughts, namely because it was where the Kyuubi had first assaulted Konoha. It still carried an unwavering taint of the beast, much like how a few places that were connected with the Yondaime still carried his trace. Damn, it's getting dark, Anko muttered to herself, pouring on an extra burst of speed. The last thing she wanted to do was try and fight him in the dark. Snakes operated best in the dark, after all. Still, she would have given almost anything to know why he was even in this area or part of that Akatsuki group, but that was not really important. What was important was the fact that he had obviously Hayat. After all, Orochimaru was not one to leave someone around to ruin his fun. Anko noticed the trap at the last second, grasping a jutting branch and swinging around and up to avoid the explosive note that had been directly in her path. Glaring down at it with narrowed eyes, she snorted in annoyance. Who the hell does he think I am? As if I'd fall for that. Then, like it was yesterday, she felt the familiar tingle of his chakra and moved, just as some unknown jutsu decimated the branch she had just been on. The explosion, of course, set off the poorly hidden, yet surprisingly powerful, explosive note, which forced Anko's body to jerk out of control and enter another branch stomach first. It almost crippled her. If the bee in her mouth was any indication, she had at least had some internal trauma now. Still, she was Mitarashi Anko, Jonin of Konoha, former Anbu. She was not going to stop after this. Clutching at the tree, she swung her legs forward and then backward into a flip, so that she landed upright in a flutter of her overcoat. To complete her look of awesomely cool, she licked the bee on her chin away and grinned at the impassive-looking Hayate on a branch across from her. You really know how to get a girl's interest, sensei. Kakuku, Hayate managed with a very snake-like smile. I knew there was someone following me. My, this really is becoming a reunion, isn't it? Yeah, Anko agreed gruffly, losing her playful manner. So, why are you here? To try and the Hokage, or something pedophilic? None of the former, since I have no interest in old men, Hayate said, an unusually long tongue lolling out to lick at his lips. Maybe a bit of the latter, you know me and children. Quote. You really are sick, Anko muttered, eyes narrowed. Even though we haven't seen each other for a while, Hayate said, reaching up to casually peel away the F of his face and reveal purple tattoos and yellow, snake-like eyes. You're so cold, my sweet, little viper. Orochimaru, Anko said darkly, wondering, despite herself, how someone who should have been in his 50s could look as if he had not aged since reaching adulthood. Quote. I am not your viper anymore. Oh, Anko, the Sannin said in a mocking fashion. You'll always be mine. Anko opened her mouth to retort when, suddenly, a fiery pain exploded through her mind. Sweat formed on her skin, and she clutched at the cursed seal on her N. Goo. Crouching down, Orochimaru grinned pleasantly. I guess I'll just have to remind you of that, and you know how I like to hear you scream. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.